Today, we're talking about my dad, and we're going to wrap this up in a briefer video, hopefully, just so that when we launch into the next video, number 15, and we start talking about how my mom and dad were together as parents and a married couple parenting all 5 of my siblings and myself growing up, and some of the stories and experiences and the dynamic that was in our household growing up, you'll have a good solid base and understanding of some of the things that went on when I was growing up and what they brought to marriage and parenthood. Thank you so much for joining me on Whole Wellness with Ann. We're in a series about abuse. It is designed to be chronological, so I definitely recommend starting with video number 1 and kind of walking through, but pick up anywhere, feel free, because honestly, it all contains relevant information that hopefully you will be able to relate to and use in your own journey as kind of relating material and maybe reflecting back on your own childhood and seeing how it compares. I was raised in an abusive home. My siblings absolutely, and my parents would not agree with that statement. But as I mentioned, video number 1, 2, and 3, 4 all talk about what that means and why we're doing this series. So go back and check those out when you get time. So I did video number 11 talking about my mom, video and her background and what she brought to marriage and parenthood. Video number 12 was a little bit of my mom and my dad, their childhood, what they brought to parenthood and marriage. And then video number 13 was primarily my dad and 2 major sticking points, heat and medical insurance, that created a very anxiety-ridden childhood and home dynamic for me growing up. So here's a little bit more about what my dad brought to the family in terms of being the leader of the home, which I think is very important to talk about when you're talking about your home life and your upbringing. It's very important to consider, or at least take into consideration, your parents' childhood and upbringing and in ways they may be unhealthy and what they've brought to the family, your family of origins dynamic, because that contributes to the unhealthy behaviors and relationships that exist now in your family of origin. They come from somewhere. So, and then there's a reason, and again, we talk about this in the earlier part of the series, that there's a reason that unhealthy behaviors and toxic behaviors and relationships exist. They're born from something. So when my dad left college, he had a teaching degree. He majored in math and minored in political science, and he taught for only, I believe, 5-6 years. And as he has told me many times, the reason that he left teaching was because he couldn't get along with the parents. This is what he has told us, word for word. He could not get along with the parents for various reasons. The parents behaved as though their children were entitled. There was this, there was that, there was conflict, there was whatever. And my dad had obviously very strict and firm opinions on how he should be able to teach and be a teacher. I can speak for myself. As a side note, and as a parent, I would never allow my very own dad to be a teacher in the manner he believes he should have been allowed to teach to my own children. So that says a load, I'm sure. So what did my dad decide to do when he left teaching? Move his family 3 hours away from their home and go into business with his brothers, which only lasted like 2 years because he couldn't get along with them either. That's from the horse's mouth. That's what he says. And of course he has reasons and excuses and all this other stuff. Now, my dad at that time had just moved his family several hours away from their original home. He had just bought a home for his family. He had a wife and 3 children. I was 4 at the time, 5 maybe, and I'm guessing the age range. So if I was 4, my mom would have been pregnant with my younger sister, or I might have been 5 and my sister was a newborn. I don't know for sure, but there was a significant family responsibility there. So when my dad left teaching, decided to go into business with his brothers, couldn't get along with his brothers, had to go out and find a job to support his family. My dad has a teaching degree. He is a major in math. He's a minor in political science. What does he do? Go out and get a job that has benefits and insurance and a retirement and security and room for advancement and a place where he could really make a career? No. Nope. My dad decides to go into business for himself. Now, as an adult now, who's somewhat educated, looking back on that now, in my opinion, I have to wonder what my dad used for collateral for a small business startup loan at that time. I'm sure he did not have a whole lot of money to start a business, if any money at all. Did he use the family home as collateral? I don't know. But I will tell you this, risky. Risky with a capital R-I-S-K-Y. To start a business. Now, yeah, I'm judging my dad in this because I cannot believe that he did this. I mean, it all worked out for him in a way. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But that kind of sets the example and kind of explains where my dad's mind was at. I believe one of the sticking points when I was growing up, and one of the reasons my dad and I constantly butted heads and why he and I oftentimes just did not get along, is because his pride was up here, above and beyond any value or moral code or ethic or anything like that. My dad's pride operated at the top. Everything revolved around his pride. He tells me to this day that he had a family to provide for and he took it seriously, and he wants to look like this noble person that did this thing for his family. And great, I'm glad it worked out. We were fortunate to have him working so hard, but here's the thing, it just as easily could have not gone well. He made a very risky decision going into business for himself when he had a degree, very good degrees from a university, and having his teaching certificate. Getting into, he honestly could have set himself up for a much better situation had he not started his own job, but he could not work for anyone else. My dad has never worked for anyone else since he left college. Let me rephrase that, since he left teaching. So, when I said a moment ago about how I was going to explain how it turned out, sort of, here's how it turned out. My dad was able to provide for his family. I am almost 100% sure that my dad did not do everything legally. And that's the way it was, I guess, back then. And that's the way it kind of sometimes is now. That's not how I am as a person, though. And so I take issue a little bit with that, depending on what exactly was done. But I'm sure there were probably many ways in which things were not probably done legally. I did work for my dad one season when I was in college. When I say season, I mean one summer season in between my freshman and sophomore year in college, I believe, or between my senior year in high school and freshman year in college. And when I was younger and when my brothers were younger, we were forced to work for my dad for free. Like, we were labor for him for very cheap, clearly, for free. So, and I believe that he probably thought we owed him. We were his kids. We had to do it. We had no say. It wasn't, can you please come do this for me? I'll pay you ABC for your time or anything like that. No, we were told to do it and we were expected to do it, especially my two older brothers. Now, when I get into future videos, keep this statement in mind. My dad paid for the supplies and took full advantage of my talent in art to design displays. Sorry, I've got to adjust my camera. And paint his windows with holiday themes and things like that for his storefront. And even though he took advantage of this and fully exploited and was impressed by supposedly my talent, my ability, and saw potential, later on you'll see what I'm talking about. He poo-pooed when it became a passion for me, when art became a passion for me, and it wound up being a complete waste of time, even though he took full advantage of my talent when it could do him some good. When he could benefit from my abilities, he utilized them to the nth degree. But art was never going to be a career for me, in my dad's opinion. I might as well just wait tables or be a bartender and at least collect really good tips off of being a very friendly, outgoing person, you know? But no, skill, talent, passion, that didn't really mean a whole lot to my dad, I don't think. In any case, I don't want to get off topic. The point is, my dad made his business work. So when I say he made a success out of his business, let me rephrase that. Would I say he made a success out of his business? I guess if your definition of success means that he was able to support his family, yeah, he was a successful businessman. However, he alienated his entire family because of it. Because in order to make his business successful, he had to work 6-7 days a week, 12 hours a day. And he had obligations and he had commitments, and there were things we couldn't go on vacation. There were, rarely, if ever, I think we maybe went on one vacation or maybe a weekend trip somewhere. Growing up, we never took vacations. It just wasn't the norm. It wasn't something we could do. Number one, we couldn't afford it, supposedly. And number two, he could never take the time off. We were stuck at home all the time. And we never did anything as a family because my dad worked so much. He was wanting to rest on Sunday, and we'll get into that in future videos in more detail. But here's the thing. Even though he made a success of his business in that he could support his family during their childhood, my dad alienated everyone in the family. The one person who wanted to work for him and with him was my mom, and he wouldn't let her anywhere near the business. If he needed her as a last resort, she could come watch the store for him, but that's it. She could not know or was not allowed to know anything about the business or work there in any way, shape, or form, which I thought at that time was kind of just him being stingy. But now I look back and go, there's probably a very good reason. Probably had to do with some illegal stuff or something. I don't know. I really don't know, but I'm pretty sure that there's a very good reason why my mom was not allowed to, or not invited to, or not welcome to help out, except when he was absolutely desperate. So by the time my dad got to be an age where he started to have serious medical problems, and we became the age where we could probably step in and take over his business for him, none of us were interested, not even close. He had alienated all of us. None of us were interested in taking over his business for him. So when it came down to the wire and he had to make a decision about whether he was going to temporarily close or sell the business or something like that, he wound up closing the doors and liquidating everything. And his business is gone now, which in my opinion is probably not the dream he had when he was a young man. Could it have worked out differently? Absolutely. Could it have been better? Absolutely. Had my dad possibly tabled his pride for just a couple of years, if his dream was to open his business, then by George, open your business. Stick with your passions, Dad. Stick with your dreams. If you want to work for yourself, then just spend a couple of years planning, saving money, building up a retirement and taking advantage of the benefits that an employer might offer, and work towards having your own business. But no, it was like a band-aid. Just rip it right off. I don't get along with the parents, so I'm not going to teach. I don't get along with my brothers, so I'm not going to go into business with them. I'm going to start my own business and prove to the world, or prove to myself, that I can make it, I can do it, I can make a name for myself, and whatever. So not only that, hugely risky. So clearly my dad carried his own demons, and in particular pride and control and manipulation and all this kind of stuff, into his marriage and his being a dad. He never joked or played with us growing up. He never had an intimate relationship with any of us. It was all business. Sunday, like I mentioned, was a day of rest. We never went anywhere. We never did anything. He was the boss. He controlled every aspect of the household. No one had a say. And if you caught him on the wrong day, and this is also true for my mom, if you caught him on the wrong day, as I mentioned in video number 11 about my mom, oh my gosh, walking on eggshells all the time with both of my parents. Because if you caught him at the wrong moment or on the wrong day, oh my gosh, they'd make you feel like the scum of the earth. One wrong look, one wrong word, one wrong gesture, oh my gosh, and they would come down on you and just tear you up. And I believe that my oldest brother, the one who is undiagnosed narcissistic personality disorder to the T, he's like a lab rat example of an NPD person. He got the brunt of my parents' mental abuse, I believe. I don't think that he was born with a capacity to adapt. In fact, he has the volatile behavior characteristic trait that oftentimes professionals will say narcissists, people diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, must have this biological tendency of having a very volatile or hyper behavior, and then they're raised in a home where they're not receiving empathy and they're getting very critical judgment, and they're not being taught how to manage their emotions and handle themselves and mirroring intimacy with their parents, and they are just completely lost. And I think that's my oldest brother to a T. And that's why I say that he is a NPD to T, like lab rat type. You know, he was like born in a petri dish or something. I don't know. For me, for use, for later, for now, for my healing. At some point in time, I genuinely hope to be able to do a video or at least a recording where I interview him without, I mean, honestly, I will honestly tell him probably why I would like to record him, and just ask him a bunch of questions and put it on here, not by way of explaining him. So probably it won't be a video recording. It might just be a voice recording, but in order for people who do not know what a narcissist is and how they handle themselves, because he and I have somewhat of a decent relationship these days in terms of we don't talk, where there's no intimacy, but he can talk to me. If I ask him something, he'll talk to me. He'll be very honest with me, as honest as he possibly can be. Unlike enablers and targets. With narcissists, you know, they rely on enablers and targets, and that's what they surround themselves with. My oldest brother, I am not either of these things with him, and I think he knows that. Getting back to my dad, and to wrap this video up, I was born an empath. You know, I came into this world being a very deeply feeling person and very observant, and I think when I was born being very sensitive and very nurturing and very caring about people and the world and everything in it, and then dealing with my parents' trauma and anxiety and chaos, and I think that I became even more of a intense empath. I think that I can see and feel and am very much in tune with people's emotions and their energies. And so I never really adapted for survival. It was constant combat because I just could not adapt. There was something in me that, you know, I was forced into submission often. If you check out my prior videos, you'll understand what I'm talking about. I was abused, I was criticized, I was judged, I was put down. And I fought. It was basically survival mode my entire life. But I never succeeded. There was a point at which where I just succumbed and gave up. When I was about 13 years old, I talk about that conflict I had with my dad where he had me pinned on the floor. I don't remember which video in this series that I talked about, but basically I never succeeded. And I think that's why I carried all this into adulthood and failed miserably. And now I'm approaching the age of 50, and all of a sudden the blinders have blown off because of the triggering experience I had on that job where I worked with two narcissists one who I was a flying monkey for, and one who I was the target for. And it just made me crazy. 5 years of this. If you're tuning into this video and you know none of that, just go back and check out some of my other videos and you'll get the story. That's where I'm going to wrap up this about my dad and a little bit more of what he brought to parenthood, and as far as like the supporter and the provider for the family, a little bit more information about that. When we get into the next video, we are going to get into my mom and my dad and what parenthood and being a child in our home was like for me growing up. So we've got video number 11, 12, and 13 talk about my parents, their background, and what they brought to marriage and parenthood. Now we're going to talk about from a child's perspective, looking up at my parents and what was going on for me, what was happening with my dad and my mom and their different styles of parenting us and what it was like in the household. I want to say thank you so much for joining me on Whole Wellness, and thank you for staying tuned for this series on abuse. It's a hugely important and personal topic to me, and I'm sure plenty of others, and I hope all of this content has been useful for you to apply to your situation and to look back on your past and kind of put things in perspective and evaluate how things were for you, and perhaps apply it to your current life and behaviors and relationships in hopes that it will actually help you become more aware of the direction that you're going in your life with your relationships and your peace of mind and your mental and spiritual and emotional wellness. Thank you so much again. Take care of you.